All right. Well, good evening and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the discussion on Project 2025 implications for our planet. I'm Sharon Smaga. I am sort of the host that just came on because the host that was going to MC was sick today. So you get me. But I just want to welcome everybody to this program. There were some of us in the community who had heard of Project 2025 and heard some things but didn't really understand everything that was involved in the proposed mandates and wanted more clarification of what would be happening if these mandates ever did become law or actually become part of what's going on in our community. And so we put this together. We had a couple of people who actually have studied this and can tell us a little bit more information about what Project 2025 is. So today's agenda, um, during the welcome, we'll have some personal impact stories based on the proposed implementation of Project 2025, some background on the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025, and then the personal impact stories, questions, and discussion. So we will have two speakers, and then we will have time for question and answers after that. And welcome, come on in. So as I say, we have two guest speakers today. Our first speaker will be Teresa Machikow Hopkins. She's an attorney in Marion who primarily works as a guardian ad litem. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. For abused and neglected children. She also practices in the area of family law. She loves to kayak, so she loves the outdoors. She loves to hike. We will then online have Kay Klinkenborg from Sun City, Arizona. She is a member of the Spiritual Directors International, a spiritual companion. She's a retired RN, LMFT, and a clinical member of AAMFT. So we will and there, for those who are present here, we do have some paper resources. There's also some online resources that are available that you can look up on your own as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Teresa Machikow Hopkins to come and speak.
Hi, I'm Teresa Machikow Hopkins. I think I'm supposed to talk about one of my personal impact stories first. My first personal impact story involves my son, Isaac. My son is just turned 23 recently. He is a graduate of the University of Illinois at Champaign with a bachelor's degree in meteorology. As we're going to learn, part of Project 2025's goals is to completely do away with the National Weather Service and to do away with NOAA. And it seems a little silly given that we've had two hurricanes within the last month, and part of the proposed writing, it is in their writing, is that they're going to do away with the people that report on hurricanes and the people that give us our weather. So what we have found as my son has graduated in May and is trying to obtain employment with the National Weather Service, because the National Weather Service doesn't know what's going to happen, because Project 2025's goal is to start this and implement it, part of it on day one, and have it fully up and running within 120 days of a Trump administration being put into place. The National Weather Service essentially, and NOAA has a hold on all employment and hiring. So this has caused a problem because in the event that Project 2025 does get implemented, in the effect that they do away with the National Weather Service and NOAA, there will be several senior meteorologists available for employment in the private industry. And when I say private industry, you may even have some of it on your phone in the form of AccuWeather, WeatherBug, those types of apps. The plan is we're going to learn as we go through is with Project 2025 and the National Weather Service is the idea that the government doesn't need to provide us with information on the weather because you can get it from private sources. And as we're going to see, part of the problem with that is that your AccuWeather app or your WeatherBug app right now utilizes the radar services of the National Weather Service and is maintained by the governmental agency of the National Weather Service. And you also have that app for the most part for free. I know if you use the Weather Channel app, every time you click on it, it may say, if you want premium service, pay us a small amount, but you can get basic information such as, forecast, weather, and those types of things free of charge still. The whole concept and part of what Project 2025 with the National Weather Service says is that because private agencies or private corporations can provide this service, there's no necessity for the National Weather Service to do that. However, what we forget is with the National Weather Service, for example, and those of us that were here last spring when the tornadoes were going through, if you had damage to your house and you turned it over to your insurance company, one of the very first questions that was asked was, what did the National Weather Service say about this particular incident? It is the National Weather Service that issues the watches, the warnings. It is the National Weather Service that comes out after tornadoes to say what level the tornado is. So it's not just a matter of just forecasting and tell us what the temperature is going to be the next day. There are a lot of other things that they do. Now, NOAA as a hurricane center, they do a lot of research into hurricanes and prevention. And we saw this just within the last month that they are the ones that were able to give a lot of advanced warning to those proposed areas that were going to be hit. So the doing away with that is primarily because of concept that there is no global warming. This is all woke. And this is actually in their document that, there is no really climate change and there's no necessity for spending money on this type of thing, particularly when you still have AccuWeather. But it'll be really interesting. Who's going to issue the tornado warning? Who's going to issue the flood watch? Who's going to issue the if there's a blizzard that's coming? What agency, governmental agency, is going to be doing this if we don't have the National Weather Service or NOAA? So what Project 2025 has done has, like I said, personally impacted me and my family certainly from a financial point of view, because we thought the whole plan all along was for my son to be working in a forecasting position at this point for the National Weather Service. 5 years ago when we were at U of I and spoke with the dean about meteorology, he said, we have a 95% placement rate for graduating with a degree in this. And right now he and most of his classmates are in the same position. And it's all because of this document and the concern that they're going to do away with the National Weather Service. So that's my first personal impact story. And with that, if Kay's on, I will turn it over to Kay.
Good evening. It's good to be with you today. I'm Kate Klinkenborg, as the host introduced me, and thank you so much for being invested in the topic, and particularly thank you to the Carbondale Library and its staff that has coordinated spreading the word and getting out the topic event for tonight, which is what does Project 2025 do in regards to the implications for a healthy planet? I want to give you three major pieces of background, which gives you a context of how important this document, Project 2025, is. Because people often say to me, well, it's just a piece of paper. Well, you need to know who published it, who's behind it, where the money's coming from. And I'm going to just do a very brief overview of that. The Heritage Foundation published Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation was formed in 1973 as a a general Republican think tank to produce for any future Republican presidents platforms, agendas to consider that they wanted to have them focus on or suggested that they, in their presidency, look at seriously. The very first, quote, mandate for leadership was what it was called, was done in 1981, and Ronald Reagan was the first president to get this document from Heritage Foundation. When he received the document at his very first total cabinet meeting as a president, he gave every cabinet member a copy of the document and said, here's our model. Not we're going to do it all, but said, here's our model. We're going to evaluate these, and we're also going to add or subtract things we think as Republicans we wish to focus on in our government during this time of serving in this office. What you need to know about Heritage Foundation is that its agenda has changed. It is not a generalized Republican platform anymore. Between the years of 2012 to 2016, they began to shift to a very far right extreme view of government and government influence on our freedoms, on our agencies, what should exist, what doesn't. They handed former President Trump in 2016 a document mandate for leadership that they had produced since 81, updating it always, and they gave it to him. They announced in 2018 that he had already completed 2/3 of what they had suggested he do. Let me give you a couple of examples. He left the Paris Accord climate agreement. He left the nuclear agreement with Iran. Those are two of many of their proposed changes that the Heritage Foundation suggests he do. And in 2 years, he had done 2/3 of that document. What has happened when he did not win in 2020 and the president became a Democratic president is the Heritage Foundation said, we need to get ready. We're going to re-elect Trump. We're going to put our money behind him, and we're going to produce a full volume of how we're going to change the federal government governance policy, the federal governance major three systems, federal in the Constitution, the three governing Department of Justice, those agencies, what other agencies we're going to do away with, what other ones we're going to limit. And this is what we want done to make our government be more efficient and our government address, quote, their language, real concrete issues. I'm going to start a quote as I begin to talk to you about what's in this document regarding climate change, a direct quote from Paul Dans, who was the director of writing this 900+ page document. He and two others were the directors of this. And he quoted to the New York Times that one of their aims of Project 2025 is to investigate whether the dimensions of climate change even exist. I think the science is still out on that, quite frankly, end quote. Throughout the document, they talk about Biden's fanaticism with climate change, and they consistently say in the document they do not believe in it. So I have selected 7 major categories that cover the changes that influence climate change for us as a government, for our planet, globally as we participate with other countries, and what they propose they're going to happen. Now, I'm going to give you page numbers. When I cite to you a page number, that page number means you can go to 2025.org, click on, open up the PDF, whole 900 pages. It will not stay on your computer permanently. You can delete it, but you can go to those specific pages and see if I'm right and validate that what I'm telling you is the truth about what they say they're going to do. The other thing you will notice about the numbers is when you think they would do climate change, they would have it all in one category from pages, for example, maybe they would go from 200 to 320. No, it is throughout the whole document. So when you go looking for a specific topic that they are wanting to influence or change, you have got to do your research and find out everything that's touching that topic. And that's what I've chosen to do for you this evening. This is a part of a bigger program where I do a 2-hour class on what is in the whole project. And I have picked out climate change and enhanced it for you to have all the details I can get a hold of for tonight. So the very first, number 1 of the 7, is they are going to create a new department called Office of Science and Technology Policy. They're calling it OSTP for short. It's on pages 58 through 60. And I'm quoting to you what they are saying. Quote, finally, the next administration, meaning the Republican administration, will face a significant challenge in unwinding policies and procedures that are used to advance radical gender, racial, and equity initiatives under the banner of science. Similarly, the Biden administration's climate fanaticism will need a whole government unwinding. As with other federal departments and agencies, the Biden administration's leveraging of the federal government's resources to further the woke agenda should be reversed and scrubbed from all policy manuals, guidance documents, and agendas, and scientific excellence and innovation should be restored under this new program of OSTP. Just that alone kind of says, whoo, takes my breath. They say if we want to look at science, we're woke. That indicates a lot of stuff just in that quoted paragraph that I gave you. In that context, here is what they're going to eliminate under this number 1, OSTP. We don't know if it's going to be a cabinet position or a department or an office yet. They haven't said. They're going to eliminate or overhaul the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, eliminate or overhaul the Office of State and Community Energy Programs, and those are the ones that work with communities to significantly accelerate the deployment of clean energy technologies in their communities. And it also recommends the elimination or reform of the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. And it calls for an end to the whole agency to stop focusing on climate change and green and green subsidies. They're going to end Department of Energy Loans. And to do that, they're going to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in 2021 by bipartisan agreement, but between both parts of Congress. And they are going to, in repealing that, they are going to lose a lot of jobs. I have numbers as predictions, but tonight we will not go into those numbers. That'll take too much time. The second category I want to talk to you is what was discovered when in September 19th of 2024, a month ago, the Congressional House Committee on the Budget discovered the following in looking at Project 2025. It will put polluters' preferences over people, and our climate future is at grave risk, is their quote. It repeals the Inflation Reduction Act, throwing away the single greatest investment in combating the climate crisis in American history. It guts the EPA Environmental Protection Agency and guts the Department of Energy, DOE. And it directs the EPA to ignore the effects of greenhouse gases on public health and environment. And it specifically says, they note in their document, the Senate committee, the Congressional House Committee says on page 365, it's going to limit the number of industries that are required to report their emissions to the EPA. As of today, we have 41 high emitting industries that have to report right now, and they're going to stop them and say you don't have to report anymore. The third category is they're going to eliminate the EPA's Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. Now, the EPA, we think, is just one thing in and of itself, but the EPA has many operative subcommittees and departments underneath it that do vital things. And one of them is in eliminating this Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. They're going to try to end what is called the Global Change Research Act that was passed in 1990 by Congress that says we will do annual national climate assessments and we'll share them with other countries so that we can keep track of what is happening in the world with the global climate crisis. On page 425, the Project 2025 is going to challenge the 2009 definition of, quote, endangerment finding, end quote. Now, we have in our government a National Resources Defense Council. We know about it, but we don't know much about what, we aren't told much about what it does unless we go search and snoop for ourselves. Well, according to the National Resource Defense Council, the EPA has been required under them to take action under the Clean Air Act to curb emissions of carbon dioxide, methane, and 4 other heat-trapping air pollutants from vehicles, power plants, and other industries. So if they're going to challenge this endangerment finding, that you're not allowed to go look for them, that you can't evaluate them, and you can't draw statistics on them, then we are going to have a crisis, not with just climate, but we're going to endanger public health and the environment at the same time. Thus, the EPA, under the Clean Air Act, it's going to be a lot harder to take measures to combat greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, and other harmful climate change impacts. Remember, that's page 425. Now, Teresa gave you a good summary of what number 4 is, which is disband the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. She gave you a good summary of that. I'm going to add some quotes and some page numbers to that for you. Their quote in Project 2025 on page 664. The National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, known as NOAA, should be dismantled and many of its functions eliminated, sent to other agencies, privatized, or placed under the control of states and territories. Leaving thus, with that decision, that leaves what we call Americans behind a paywall. And behind a paywall means private companies are going to do that. They're going to make the profit, and we're not going to have any regulatory confinement, any regulatory regulations, any restrictions on what they choose to do or not do. This is a quote by a Heritage Foundation spokesperson. Ellen Keenan told the USA Today that the National Hurricane Center will be under review in Project 2025, but we do note that the public safety it plays a role in public safety, but we're not sure how we'll handle that, end quote. The National Flood Insurance Program, known as NFIP, we certainly know about that from the last month, to say the least, plus the last few years. Their quote is, it should be wound down and replaced with private insurance, starting with the least risky areas currently identified by this program. So a lot under NOAA. What I would like to, I'm going to get into further about NOAA when I talk about the Department of Interior. When I'm finished with that, I'm then going to ask Teresa, who has followed NOAA more intensely than me, if she has other things she wants to step up and say. But let's move to number 5 about what they're going to push the Department of Interior to do, which goes with this disbanding of NOAA. On page 523, they are going to ask the Department of Interior to conduct offshore oil and natural gas lease sales to the maximum extent and rewrite the permits to do so, end quote. They're going to remove key protections for public lands, threatening these vital natural resources, national monument protections, threatening the $59 billion in state and local tax revenue every year that goes to recreational environments for the American public. And that's our national and state parks. That's found on pages 532 to 535. They are going to ask the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I've heard that my entire life. I thought I knew what they do. I have a basic idea about what they do, but they're going to inform them that they are to favor fossil fuels over any renewable energy source. That's on page 400. They're going to transfer environmental funding away from mission-based entities to state regulators whom do not believe in climate change or science. We have many state governors and state regulators who openly say they do not believe in climate change. They're going to allow fossil fuel companies to drill on more public lands, drill into public waters, and onto indigenous reservation lands that are supposed to be protected. This will make more utility monopolies, and it will raise prices for consumers significantly. They are going to expand drilling opportunities in the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska. The one name that probably rings the bell with you the most is the Willow Oil Drilling Project. They're going to say restart it, complete it, and they're going to allow logging opportunities in the Tongass National Forest in Alaska. That's one example, one location, one state. I'm not going to go into what they have in mind for Colorado and other states where there has been and where they're requesting future drilling. Teresa, do you have anything you want to add about NOAA at this point?
When you were talking about the Department of Interior on page 523, when you were talking about the Thompson Divide, it is also talks about abandoning withdrawal of lands from leasing in the Thompson Divide, White River National Forest, Colorado, and the Boundary Waters. I don't know if any of you have ever gone to the Boundary Waters and done any kayaking or canoeing or fishing, but they are some of the most crystal clear areas that we still have, and they are protected. And it says, meanwhile, revisit associated leases and permits for energy and mineral production in these areas in consultation with state elected officials. So, I mean, the thought of, some of the most pristine areas of our country being able to just be essentially ruined. I mean, if they allow leases to, or, oiling to go into those areas. When you were also talking about the insurance, my brother is a licensed architect, primarily out of St. Louis, but he's licensed in Florida, and his best friend is also an architect who happens to be licensed in Florida and California. And just this past weekend, I was with him, and the two of them were talking about the devastation in Florida, and that the new rules that are in part in Florida require the buildings to be able to withstand winds now up to 180 miles an hour. And how expensive it is in order to build to that specification. And so what they were talking about, and if you pull up your app Zillow right now and you look at Reddington, Indian Beach, Treasure Island, all of those areas that were devastated, Sarasota, Bradenton, numerous houses are up for sale simply because they didn't have insurance. Most of the insurance companies, State Farm, Prudential, Allstate, they had pulled out of Florida a long time ago. And your primary source of getting insurance was through the state. But you couldn't get it if you were in a flood prone area also. So a lot of these people that were flooded out didn't have flood insurance. And rebuilding is going to be cost prohibitive, especially with the new building regulations that have been put on because of the climate change necessity for having to have buildings that can withstand 180 mile an hour winds. So I'm sorry.
Would you repeat the question you hear for me, please, Teresa?
Oh, she said it's similar to Carbondale where we have so many empty houses. Well, I think what my brother and his friend were saying was what's going to happen is that just really the uber wealthy are going to be able to live in these areas because they're going to be the only ones that are going to be able to build to sustain that. So a lot of people that have that may live within a quarter of a mile or half a mile of the coast that have had generational homes, there, they just won't be able to afford it. Yes. What she's asking, Kay, is could we argue that same effect is going to be here because of the more tornadoes coming because of climate change? I can't stand insurance companies. So, but I mean, that's just being a lawyer. I can't stand insurance companies. It seems like they take our money, and then when you need them, they argue with you. So I guess, yes, theoretically that could be. I mean, there are certain areas even here where you can't get flood insurance. There's certain areas here. Primarily it used to be along the rivers, but right now we are in a severe drought in Southern Illinois and all along Southern Missouri. I mean, if you look at the map right now, that's how we're classified. You can walk out to the big tower in Cape Girardeau because the Mississippi is so low. The commerce is being stopped because the boats can't get down the river right now. So we're facing our own issue because of the climate change right here in Southern Illinois and Southeast Missouri because of that. Yes, it will get a lot worse if Project 2025 is implemented. So.
Thank you,
All right.
Teresa.
I'll throw you back to Kay.
Okay, thank you so much. She's moved us right into the next category, number 6, so beautifully, because what we're looking at is how this is going to alter every state's agricultural and farm food production system. Okay. And there are some key things that have been put in Project 2025 that it's going to be dependent on what state you're in. I'm in Arizona. We've had the hottest summer ever on record, as well as many other states in the Southwest. So high heat, floods, tornadoes, fires, many, many things are changing the agricultural options of what we grow, how we grow it. Do we create new hybrids to tolerate drought, etc.? So number 6 is altered resources for farmers / agriculture. On page 297, Project 2025 wants to restrict safety nets for farmers to, quote, unusual situations. Now, you and I know what that means, and that's if they've had a drought year, or it's been a difficult experience, or they've had more rain than they planned. And farmers know that the weather's unpredictable. They live with that. They take a gamble on that. But there has been in place since the New Deal what has been known as the Big Ag support. Okay, that's what it was called, the Big Ag support. And it's existed since the New Deal because farming is unpredictable because the weather can't be predicted every year to be the same. So what they're going to do is they're going to restrict that assistance to farmers as to how much and in what condition and what caused it. They haven't said, well, they haven't defined it. They haven't put it in print yet, but they've said they're going to change it. And what's disparately going to happen is we have corporate farms now, okay? And corporate farms have a lot of land and they have a lot of loan-backed resourcing to tap into from banks. What does the small farmer do? What does the lower income farmer do? Because they don't have that financial infrastructure under them to say, hey, loan me 500,000 here or 800,000 there, because they're not corporate for their farming. So our farmers are what we call our lifestyle farmers, not corporate farmers. Our lifestyle farmers, generational farmers, are going to disparately be impacted, and they have no assets to fall back on, and they're either going to go bankrupt, just go deeper and deeper to debt, and enter poverty stages if they aren't already living on a poverty wage because of the price of how things are changing regarding seed and fertilizer, etc. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has been asked to reject prioritizing climate or environmental considerations on anything they choose to do to interact with the states regarding agricultural issues. That's a very powerful statement. Your mind can start to run a lot of directions about what that means. So this is an end to federal environmental enforcement for farms as well. We have suggested to farmers and said, can you plant this way? Can you manage your land this way? Can some be not used for a year? Can you rotate crops? Some of those are restrictions, some are suggestions, but they're going to put an end to any federal environmental enforcement. Now think about our food. Our food sources come from our farmers. And yes, some come from Mexico. Yes, we get things from other places. But the work requirements for food aid, the SNAP program for people who are on the poverty line, or the thrift food program for those that are seniors, they're going to ask them to go to work to get the stamps to use to get assistance. Now, our country's tried that 3 other times, and every time it failed. Because what happens is people can't pay the child care to go to work to earn money that then decreases the number of stamps they get for SNAP. So they're better off if they just stay poor and take the SNAP benefit. And they're going to literally end all free lunch school programs. That is terrifying when we think about hungry children in our country. This summer alone, there were 6 states who get federal school lunch program assistance who on their own decided not to use that money that was said buy free lunches for kids in summer school. 6 states, they happen to be red states, chose to say no school lunches this summer and didn't spend the money where they were told to. Let's go to number 7. And this is a big category because we don't live in isolation in the United States. And number 7 is Project 2025's jeopardizing of global climate action. Now, some of this is going to have page numbers, but some of this is coming from the other references the people in the library have an access to on their sheet, like AmericanProgress.org, the InsideClimateNews.org, and I think those are the 2 primary ones. So I won't have page numbers for you, but this is documented information. Project 2025 threatens collective global action on climate change by advocating for the United States to step away from formal engagement in international forums where countries of the world collaborate or share solutions to the hardest questions facing humanity. Trump did this once. He stepped out of the Paris Climate Accords. He promises to do it again. It's in print in Project 2025 that they're going to do it again. These multilateral institutions include, like the development banks, like the World Bank. We're not going to cooperate with them. And the intergovernmental organizations like the United Nations. We're going to limit our interaction with them, stay uninformed about what is happening elsewhere, and not participate in goals that they set. The scale and complexity of the climate crisis means that every country must do their part to protect the planet. And much of what our Project 2025 is saying is if we get in the Republican-controlled presidency, we're not going to participate in these things. Now, I want to tell you, there's a cautionary tale here that needs to be capitalized. If we get a Democratic president, Project 2025 is still going to push, and it's still going after their agenda. Hear that in all capitals. They've done it while Biden's been president, and they've got many things pushed through that were on their agenda, although Trump was not president, that was in their mandate for leadership of 2016. They kept pushing on it in 2020 through to now, and they're still pushing. They're going to push because we have Republican representatives in state houses. We have Republican senators in state houses. In the Congress, we have Republican senators and Republican representatives. Those people believe in Project 2025, and even with a Democratic president, they are going to push this agenda. It is not done if we get a Democratic president. It will happen fast if we get a Republican president. So back to that big number 7, the global impact. There is an organization we participate in called the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Its initials are UNFCCC. They want to withdraw from it. Project 2025 wishes to withdraw from that framework convention on climate change that the UN has. The United States has served as party to this organization since it was created in 1992. We have participated, been active, been leaders, been forethinkers, working with other countries on how to address global climate change. And Project 2025 says we don't want to do that anymore. The US Senate ratified the treaty for this framework convention on climate change in 1992 under President George H.W. Bush. It is a congressionally approved cooperative agreement, and Project 2025 says we don't want to do that anymore. In that it says we're also going to add a recession of all climate policies from its foreign aid programs and impose conservative religious values, such as anti-abortion policies and traditional family structures. And they define that explicitly as meaning male, female, heterosexual families. They define families as that in this document. And they're going to say any country that's in trouble and needs aid for food, resources, or climate crises, you are going to have to agree with our stands on anti-abortion and traditional family values if we're going to give you any aid. They're going to put criteria on it. We operate under what's called PREPARE. It's capitalized, PREPARE, which is the President's Emergency Plan for Adaptation and Resilience. It's the US government's strategy to use all of its tools and resources to support more than 500 million people around the world who are having to adapt to climate impacts. You've heard about the Sudan, the starving people in Afghanistan, multiple places where starvation is imminent. War is creating this as well. But the US government's strategy is to eliminate funding for this PREPARE initiative, where we help other countries in distress. And we will halt the deployment of life-saving extreme weather early warning systems and disaster risk reduction resources to communities around the world. They don't want to do it at home, and they don't want to do it abroad. You know about, and we've heard frequently in the last multiple months, because of the starvation countries that are in the news, the at-risk places because of war, homes torn down, global aid's not getting in, multiple places. We participate and have an agency called U.S. Agency for International Development, and that's USAID. It's just called USAID in short, okay? And it works with other countries across the world. And they're going to sever the partnership of USAID with other countries. We need to take care of ourselves. It's an isolationist thinking. It's an isolationist policy. Project 2025's anti-climate policy proposal would end these climate resiliency building efforts around the world, risk disruptions to productivity and food security, not only in our country, but around the world. They would eliminate the support which would undermine economic stability and worsen food insecurity multiple places, and potentially increase migration from country to country or across countries, and instability in communities that stand to lose nourishment and sources of income. That is the Inside Climate News article, most recent article, about how our agency in our government called PREPARE plans to change their interaction on the global front with language out of Project 2025. Now, I want to tell you that I did a Snoops review on many of, and a fact check on many of the things that I found along the way. The things I saw printed in Project 2025 that I gave you numbers to when they said they were going to do it, I trust that they said they were going to do it, that that's their plan. I checked out this rumor that's running around that FEMA is going to be dismantled, particularly since these two hurricanes are so prevalent and FEMA's been in the news. And there's been misinformation about FEMA not doing its job and misinformation about that money being spent on immigrants. And all of that is false. That is absolutely lies. FEMA is doing its job, and FEMA is doing what it's supposed to do in both the countries impacted by Helene hurricane and by the Milton hurricane. And Snoops tells me that Project 2025's conservative agenda for the U.S. indicates significant reforms and changes regarding the Federal Emergency Management Agency, but they give no specifics as to what or how much or what they intend to do. That's the only true fact we have about FEMA. On page 134 in Project 2025, that's the first mention of FEMA in that document, and it proposes to move it to the Department of Homeland Security or to the Department of the Interior, or combine it with Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or to the Department of Transportation. In other words, they don't know what they're going to do with it, but they're going to move it. They're going to put it under somebody else's purview and not let it be a free, independent, functioning organization that can respond independently without some oversight from some other department, and they have not decided where to put it. On pages 153 through 154, Project 2025 devotes a section to FEMA, and they organize it into these three categories, but they don't define them or say what they're going to do. They say on pages 153 through 154, we will have a, quote, needed reforms category. We will have a budget issues category, and we will have a personnel category. That's all they've said. They don't say how, what, when, or who. And so that is the essence of the height of the major things that impact climate change in Project 2025. And it's beyond the scope of this presentation to go into all the other areas of our life that it impacts. And I do note that your librarians have found a marvelous review of Project 2025 in general that they're going to show you at the end. But I'm going to ask Teresa to come share with us, and then I'm going to ask her to share, but I'm going to ask her to hold for Q&A. I would like her to share about her daughter, who is a lawyer, and where she works, what she works for, and what she's found out about Project 2025.
Well, first I have to correct you, Kay,
I'm sorry.
about
Okay.
FEMA. I have to correct you about FEMA. It has been raided one time, but that was by Donald Trump. He raided it during his presidency to remove money from FEMA to fund the wall. So
Okay. I remember
but
that.
other than that, in the
you're right.
last 4 years, it has not been rated.
You're right.
There is a wonderful article that is right now in the Washington Post today, talking about a town in North Carolina that was dealing with the whole issue with the FEMA workers not being able to provide necessary services, and a group that had come in and like set up shop in a grocery store lot and was scaring the townspeople and saying, you know, they don't have any money. We're the only ones that can help you, and you need to listen to us. And, you know, and they were just, you know, shysters. And but there's a wonderful article in the Post about that. But my daughter, Carly, she is a graduate from the University of Illinois at Champaign in 2016, or no, 2020 pandemic year, with her degree in environmental science. And she was accepted into Pace School of Law in White Plains, New York, which is the #1 environmental law school in the country. During her 3rd year of law school, she worked for the United Nations in their environmental program. In September of 22, she the school paid for it, which I was astounded by, but her school paid for her to go to Normandy, France, for a worldwide climate conference that the UN was having. It was like a precursor to their bigger conference that they were having at the end of 2022 in dealing with global climate change. And she was really excited because the group that she was in drafted a proposed motion to be looked at the bigger conference on climate change. And that motion was actually accepted to be discussed and passed at the ultimate conference later in 22. But when she graduated in 23, she passed the Washington, D.C. bar and is the honorary clerk for 2 years for the EPA. She works for the 4 administrative law judges for the EPA. So her job is only for 2 years. So once again, I have a child that is possibly impacted employment-wise because of Project 2025, because one of the provisions dealing with the EPA in Project 2025 is to do away with what they call all low employees. She would be a recent hire, so she would probably be gone within the first 120 days, even though her job will end in October of 25. But one of the things that came about in June, when the Supreme Court was issuing those very final cases that they were doing, one of the cases that they dealt with was governmental agencies and what governmental agencies can do. And the Supreme Court said, you know what, EPA, FDA, all of you governmental agencies that are specialized, you're really not specialized. A judge is going to say what exactly the regulations mean. Congress is going to say what exactly the regulations mean. You, as a governmental agency, aren't going to be able to do that anymore. Well, of course, she works for the EPA, and all she does is all day is, deal with the regulations of the EPA at an administrative level with the 4 administrative law judges there. And so it's been kind of interesting because they haven't done anything with them yet. I mean, they're still just plugging along doing what they've always done. But certainly with the EPA, the provisions in Project 2025, I imagine that entire part of the EPA will be gone, maybe merged into the Office of the Department of Justice. The 4 administrative law judges said, if we get moved to the Department of Justice right now, we're taking you with us, which is a good thing. But it's kind of scary, the ideas that they're coming up with, and just trying to say that there is no climate change. I mean, we see it, we know it, and trying to tell us that we're woke and that we don't, and that this is fake. And I don't know, Kay, if you saw, but yesterday your house did something also in Arizona. The
Yes.
Arizona Senate Republicans passed bill to prevent climate action.
Right.
They did that, and it seems like it's a precursor to what Project 2025 is wanting to do all over, but it's essentially what they're going to do is ban the use of public funds to combat climate change. the bill would also allow Arizona residents to sue any town, city, institution, or public university they believe has violated the provisions of the bill, even if they aren't affiliated with it. So you're going to have psychos coming out and suing Arizona State if you have an environmental science program there, because if they talk about climate change, you know, they're going to be violating the law. And I did a quick glance of the proposed law. And one of the things was water treatment plants. You can't have a water treatment plant that has ever come into contact with human feces. And it made me think, all of our water went through dinosaurs. I mean, are you kidding me? Okay, so where are we going to get this magic water that hasn't ever come into contact with that? It's all treated, right? So I don't know what's going on. And like you said, you've gone through the hottest summer you've ever gone through. That would make them come up with this. But it just passed yesterday in Arizona and is going to the House, and looks like it's gonna, I don't know.
Well,
We're gonna
Teresa,
have to
let me
go
make
and
a,
stand out there and
Yeah.
demand not to do it.
let me make an additional comment to that. Yes, I was aware of that. To understand the politics in Arizona right now, the House committee that has passed that will get the House to pass it because the House is majority of Republican. But we have a very astute Democratic governor, and she has vetoed a lot of things in her first 2 years, and she has plans to veto that. But it points out that many state governments are setting in place rules that will match Project 2025 if they have Republican legislators that believe and want the changes in Project 2025 to go through statewide, not just national. It points out that there's a concerted, collaborative effort. This Project 2025 document was written by 30 to 34 people, and at least 70% of them were people who got appointed positions by Trump in his administration. And it is funded by 100 corporations who are in the top 500. Heritage Foundation has over 1 million members. This is a serious organization pushing hard at state and national level to rewrite laws, government structure, and regulations, and to push against democratic thought and democratic agendas in America.
Okay, now that you're sufficiently scared, do you have any questions?
And I would like to point out to our viewers on Zoom, we do have the ability to let y'all hear the audience and any questions they may have. So I do ask our in-person audience, if you have a question, please just raise your hand and I'll bring you the mic. And if anybody has any questions in Zoom or out there on YouTube or Facebook, just let us know in the chat and we will relay that for you.
So I just kind of wanted to just get a clarification just with an idea that I'm walking away with here, because the Republican Party that's mostly pushing this is saying they're pro-family, they're pro-tradition, keeping people safe. But if all of this were to pass, people are going to get sick. People are not going to have access to food. They're not going to have access to clean water, clean land. People are going to die either immediately from the awful things that will happen because of the extreme hurricanes and the extreme tornadoes, or in the long run because they're going to get sick from the pollution. So I'm just here to say is none of this is pro-person. This just seems like it's pro-corporation. Is that a fair thing for me to walk away with here?
In my
Yes.
opinion, yes.
That's all I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Great question.
Hi, my name's Morgan Carey. I'm here with the Daily Egyptian. I just wanted to ask, we touched a little bit on the possible local impact of Project 2025 with the tornadoes and the insurance issues that would arise with that. Are there any other standout local impacts that this might have?
The lunch program, certainly. if the lunch program goes away, because if you look at Southern Illinois, there's a private organization in Carterville called Gumdrops that packages food for children every day that they deliver to schools throughout Southern Illinois, on a basis of teachers saying that they know that these kids don't have any food at home.
Mhm.
And it's actually was started by John Alman, Alman Rentals that you have here in Carbondale. He was an attorney, and he died a couple years ago. He had a plane crash, but he's the one that was one of the big supporters of Gumdrops, and it's continued to today. So, I mean, I can see that being one of the initial things if that were to happen. And of course, FEMA has been in here on different occasions. They were just here in the spring when we had the tornadoes that started in Carbondale and went through Williamson County and hit Lake of Egypt. So the National Weather Service goes away, who's going to come out and say that it was an F1 tornado like they did? And then what are the insurance companies going to do? Because your insurance companies deal with that type of situation based on what the National Weather Service does. You'll get more money if it's an F3 versus an F1. So who's going to be the person that's going to come out and say that so that you can report to State Farm or Liberty or whoever you have your car insurance if your car's destroyed, your home is destroyed, or the apartment that you rent is destroyed? So that's going to be an impact in our area. Really, all of it, just the whole concept of essentially rewriting everything to take out climate change. I mean, it's not going to impact me as much as it's going to impact you.
Might I
mean,
add something, Teresa?
Sure. I'm talking to a young person, Kate. I mean, I'm 58, so.
Yeah, that's no problem. He's talking about the food insecurity with the school program, food lunches going away. Let me quote to you. I have my big document here that I speak from when I speak for 2 hours. And there is going to be a mandate on education, and they are going to close all the doors on Head Start. They're going to fire all the staff. That's 1 million children right now that will not get lunch or breakfast each day and won't get any education before they go to kindergarten. You take 1 million children a year without food, malnourished, without education, prepared to go to school. There's another powerful local impact, nationally as well as locally.
Well, and I would say also, because you are college students, I assume that you filled out a FAFSA. You're probably aware that part of Project 2025 does away with the entire Department of Education.
Right.
So what's supposed to happen to your student loan? Who's going to issue your student loan? Where's the federal money going to come from? I mean, it's ridiculous. The whole concept of we're going to do away with it because I guess we have woke teachers that, what they're talking about doing is, as I understand it, and Kay, you probably have studied this more than I have, but that portion, I thought they were just going to move to the Department of Commerce, all the financial portions of the Department of Education. Now, I know that they had a change with the FAFSA form last year, and it was a nightmare, and that y'all didn't get your money until really, really late last year because they changed the form. I was grateful that I had filled out the last FAFSA form I thought ever. But it's the federal government that finances the majority of those Pell Grants, MAP grants, or MAP grants are Illinois based, I'm sorry, but Pell Grants and all of that. So what's going to happen to our college students? What's going to happen to our pre-Kers when they cancel Head Start? I mean, this is,
Teresa?
And the whole concept of with education, you're not going to be able to talk about climate change. It's going to be written out of the book. So Yes.
Teresa, I wanted to, you're right on target. They're going to flat out eliminate the Department of Education, not going to put it somewhere else. They're flat out going to eliminate it. But what I want to ask the audience is to be true to our topic on climate change and the impacts for our planet and our Earth. I want us to go back to, and I can give you a whole list of things they're canceling with the Department of Education, but let's go back to, are there questions in the audience, other questions regarding food security, programming, that kind of thing that are about climate change, and under that falls food security. And we can talk about some of the things that are in there about food security that fall outside the purview of climate change, but are about nutrition and well-being.
One question.
Do you know how they're going to change like food checks, food, like if you're gonna go to a slaughterhouse, like if there are gonna be qualifications, if there's gonna be a new like government thing that'll instill like quality check on food, or is it just free to whatever the business is?
You're
I could
funny,
not hear the
but
question.
she was talking about food check and quality, like slaughterhouses. I mean, we remember what company was it? The Boar's Head that had the
Listeria.
and hadn't because I think for the number of workers that they have right now, it's like they can hit their area maybe once every 2 years. So I don't know honestly how it could get worse. I guess it could, based on, what they're planning on doing. But again, the whole problem too is what do the regulations really mean anymore? And who is the person that's supposed to enforce it? There is, but I can't remember what specific section it is dealing with that.
I don't have a specific, I can't lay my hands on the specific thing regarding food inspections. FDA is what you're talking about, Food and Drug Administration. But you do need to know that all statistical gathering, okay, and I probably can find the page numbers for you while I talk about it. All statistical programs like Bureau of Labor Statistics, census, racial ethnicities, gender equality, anything to do with DEI, diverse, equality, inclusion, all statistical gathering agencies, they are combining those into a massive cabinet position, and they are going to stop collecting that data so that you can't break it out and make determinants about who's in poverty, etc. They're going to change all the limitations. They're going to limit extensively about what statistics and who can collect them, about what, and there are certain categories they're never going to collect again. And they're going to do that by combining these statistical gathering departments we have and telling them how they can function and what they want to know and what they don't want to know.
Well, and the sad thing too about it is with all of these provisions that are going to go into effect, how can we be the leaders then in climate change when we go to other countries and to India, to the Soviet Union, to Europe as a whole, the EU, and say, we need you to decrease emissions. And they're like, what are you talking about? You don't even talk about climate change. It's not even allowed to be discussed in the United States anymore. We will lose all of our leverage that we have had. I mean, it was really bad when Trump pulled out of the Paris Accords. That set us back a ways. At least, we're back in and able to talk and have a seat at the table, but that's going to go away. So
I can tell you that they're going to look at pages, if you look at pages 670 through 680, you're going to find a whole bunch of stuff about politicizing the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is kind of the head of looking at things, as well as Census Bureau. They're just going to manipulate all business data. The Bureau of Economic Analysis, they won't be able to determine a lot of data about who makes what, are small businesses thriving, how do they qualify for a loan. And they're also going to look at page 583. They're going to eliminate the Equal Employment Opportunity Program. They don't want statistics on that. And so that's going to have an impact on that statistical gathering about climate change and everything. The gathering of data is going to be impacted. Almost every department's going to be limited as to what information they're going to collect, and they're just not going to collect some of it anymore, and they're going to limit what they can collect. Other questions?
Thank you very much. That ends the presentation. There are additional resources. For those in the room, there's some paper resources in the back. For those online or anybody here, there's also some other things you can check out. There's on YouTube, I had heard about this, that John Jackson had done this talk about Project 2025. He's from the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute, and that's supposed to be very good also if you want more information about Project 2025. There's also another source listed. You want to take that down? Oh, very good. Okay, so for those that are here, you can pick up. You don't have to write it down from there. So if there's no other questions, well, thank you very much for coming. And I hope everybody's learned a little bit about, what we might have to what we are looking forward to after the next election.
Could I, Sandy, could I offer a way to help close this on a positive note? Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Okay. I have found this helpful in every one of these that I've had the privilege to speak and be asked questions of, and I don't have all the answers by any means. But if the group online and the group right now will follow me with this exercise, this is hard stuff to hear. It's scary. It makes us angry. If it drop into despair, it can feel hopeless. But I want us to remember that human beings can think, that there are human beings that are thinking, and to believe in humanity, and that we are people of hope. And I want us to do this little 3-step exercise that'll take us no more than 3 minutes to defuse the heavy energy you've had the courage to listen to tonight. And I appreciate so much your stepping up to listen and to learn. So the first thing I want you to do is, you will do this, and if you're in your home, you can say it aloud. If you're in the group, you say it in your mind. The first thing I want you to do is look around and see 3 things that you see, and say them aloud in your mind. If you're at home, say them aloud to yourself. Look at 3 things. Second step, I want you to hear and listen for 3 things you hear right now. Any sound, any movement, anything. Say it in your mind. And for those at home, say it out loud. 3 different sounds. Now I'd like you to take one or more parts of your body and move it 3 times. Head, your arm, your leg, whatever. Move it. Move something 3 times. Very good. Now I have a question for you. What's your mind thinking about? What's left? Does it feel kind of blank? then it worked. That's the 3 steps to reduce anxiety and change your focus. And that's a tool you can use in a meeting, at home, anytime, in this hard time. And just to leave you with something positive about a way to take care of yourself while you're learning hard material. You've been a very attentive audience. I feel very privileged to have been asked to just share the little bit of knowledge I have gained in doing this. And the questions you ask help me learn more and stretch me to search more. And I thank you for this opportunity, and I thank the Carbondale Library.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.